Welcome. This is the third video in my self-celebration series, and today I'm going to be celebrating my second novel, The Wizard in the Wood. If you'd like to know why I'm spending a whole video series on celebrating myself, watch the first video, Celebrating Locally, to find out those very good and worth finding out reasons. The Wizard in the Wood is an unusual one of my projects to celebrate because it is an incomplete first draft fantasy novel that is book 3 of a 6-part series, and none of the other 5 books have been written yet. But The Wizard in the Wood is magnificent and still manages to be a perfectly coherent and perfectly good standalone read for the adult fantasy enthusiast. It's an apprenticeship story, that well-worn trope. Boy meets wizard, wizard saves boy, boy becomes wizard's apprentice. That old chestnut. But I always try to do something new with every old chestnut I savour. The excerpt I'm going to read comes immediately after the wizard has just saved the boy, and it deals largely with my favourite character in the book. Not the wizard in the wood at all, but the witch, Mab. This scene comes early on in the story and is the reader's introduction to my beautiful Mab. The wizard has literally just saved the boy from being fed to a terrifying and evil beast. It has been a traumatic experience for all concerned, and the wizard is now in bad shape. In the quiet white room with wooden floorboards, the sounds of the screaming were dulled by distance, stretched and broken by their passage through the twisting of dimensions, so that they seemed to flap, tattered in a temperamental temporal wind. When a wizard stepped through the circle, supported by the small child on one side and his staff on the other, he lowered himself gingerly to his knees and coaxed the ring to shrink back to its previous size. Unhooking it from the air with a careless gesture, he allowed it to fall and roll disregarded now across the floor, so that he could curl fetally on the floorboards, beckoning the boy to come close. Already his limbs were beginning to twitch and shake uncontrollably. "I have to sleep now," sighed his voice, faint as a cobweb. "Will you be brave until I wake up?" The boy nodded, but the wizard was lost already in a fit of jerking limbs. The boy watched helplessly for long minutes, in which the only sound in the room was of the wizard's body scuffling against the floor. And then the old man was asleep and the room silent. With no available source of instructions and no experience of white rooms and sleeping wizards, the boy simply knelt there by the old man's side, unsure if he could touch him. Dusk was turning rapidly to night in the woods outside the window. Without the light from the staff shining through the portal, the room was very dark and the wizard becoming difficult to see. Beyond the room's single open door lay an ominous blackness so complete it could have concealed anything, or might even have been nothing but the void itself. Growing afraid at the feeling of being watched by a quiet, strange house, the boy eventually curled up on the floorboards by the wizard's beard and drifted towards sleep, his mind lighting up along the way with images and sounds and sensations, flashes of fear and brimstone, rolling eyes and tortured children, submerged rocks, flickering light and riverbeds, an insistent hatred, and his own hands, holding on tight, squeezing until they turned into stone. The boy slept deep and long, his spirit absented to those blessed timeless places where the waking pains of children are soothed and put aside. But the wizard's need for regeneration was even greater. As the boy slowly began to surface from sleep, he made experimental openings of his swollen eyes, but the white beard lay before him still, sleeping solidly. Still nervous of the house, the boy slunk back into dreams, but each time he returned and cracked his eyes open, he found the old man had not stirred in the slightest. Skimming the surface of sleep like this brought the boy long, lucid dreams involving white rooms lit by golden forest light, haunted by characters that, while not aggressive, were alien and fey and abstractly interested in him. When he awoke fully, it was with a creeping certainty that there was somebody else in the room. The wizard slept on, undisturbed before him. Lifting his head, he saw a bent, old hag standing stock still, 3 paces in from the doorway, and looking down at him from a hideous countenance. She was hunched over a twisted walking stick fashioned from a branch. A tremendous age had nurtured her features into grotesque proportions, her face made all the more startling by the large black irises of her eyes, which, alarmingly, seemed closer to the boy than the rest of her, yet was somehow caught in the process of sliding from her face. She was clad in black tatters and did not belong here, not in this room, not in this house, not in the waking awareness of his mind. On seeing he had awoken, her eyes trembled in their sockets, seeming to take in 1,000 details from about his body, and the tip of her tongue felt along the puckered surface of her upper lip. The glossy black irises grew larger, inviting him to fall into their depths, making him shudder, repulsed at their intimacy. He looked at the old wizard, lying defenceless at his side, and when he turned back to the crone, she was already sitting on the floor beside him, her gruesome face pushed forward towards his. Too afraid to cry out, but equally too afraid not to whimper, he jerked away but was held and pulled back by a bony grip on his arm. "Look at the state of you," she said, in a voice surprisingly soft and sensual. "It's no use struggling, you can't get away." Then she released his arm, and he remained where he was, unable to tell whether she had trapped him under a spell or he was simply too frightened to contradict her. "You boys have been in the wars. Look at you." And she ran her withered fingers over his ruin of a face. "Oh, you're a pretty one, aren't you? Such a tender little morsel. I could gobble you up in one go. Would you like that?" The boy shook his head fervently, and she coughed, delighted. "Maybe not yet, then." She cupped his face in both hands and moved her eyes even closer to his, until her irises threatened to merge into one shimmering black hole. "Let's take a look at your little friend, then, shall we?" Following her lead, he turned to look at the wizard, and gave a little jump of surprise when he saw that the old man was naked now, his lean body pale and young-looking, dissected by tattooed glyphs and schematics. "Look, see?" she said, tracing the tattoos with a cracked yellow nail. "These are protections. This hide of his could be put to potent uses, if only I could get it off his back. But look here." Around his neck was a cord on which was strung a small, unpolished grey stone with a natural hole through it. She lifted it in her fingers and turned it in the light. "I gave this to him. It protects against witches." She cackled suddenly and explosively. "Ah me," she said. Then a gleam caught her eye. "What do we have here?" Reaching out, she picked up the fallen portal ring that lay on the floorboard still. The boy gave a little gasp and then stiffened. She spared him a slow, sly glance and treated herself to a slow, sly smile. "One good turn deserves another." Holding the ring up to one of her frightful eyes, she spied the boy through it. "Oh, it's pretty, pretty." From out of nowhere she produced a leather thong, which she threaded through the ring and then tied around her neck, where it joined a miscellany of amulets, beads, bones, feathers, and stones. Pleased and self-satisfied, she preened and posed for the boy, and then she sent him to find the kitchen and build a fire. He obeyed, not knowing how to refuse, but on finding the small kitchen, which was all white walls and wooden beams and furniture like the rest of the house, with golden sunlight pouring in from the forest outside, he realised he didn't know how to build a fire, and a panic stirred in his chest. Returning nervously to the room, fearing the old woman's rebuke, he felt the floor falling away from him as he saw that both she and the sleeping wizard were gone. After a stunned period of standing and staring and not knowing how to think anymore, because he felt in the quietness of the house like a stranger to himself, the boy walked from one room to another, only to find that each swallowed him whole with its emptiness. At the foot of the stairs he paused, torn between the prospect of ascending to more empty rooms or attempting to leave the house through doors that would, he was sure, turn out to be locked and inescapable. A part of him reasoned that it didn't matter what order he decided to do these things in, and he climbed the stairs in a dream. In the second bedroom that he entered, he found the witch, sitting on the edge of the bed, looking into the sleeping face of the wizard while she stroked his arm. "Have you built that fire?" she asked, without looking up. The boy shook his head and murmured a word that didn't contain articulated sounds. The old woman sighed and placed a hand on the old man's chest. "Not to worry," she breathed. "Not to worry." The Wizard in the Wood. What can I say about it? I'm immensely proud of it. The events, the magic, the evocation of times and places, the pacing and the action are all firing on all cylinders. But it is the characters that stand out to me. Even characters who pass through a single scene once and are not heard of again carry the spirit of their own personal adventure with them, just like in real life. And wizards and witches live a long time, so they are forever trying to balance their far-reaching and far-seeing plans for the future with a long, long past they find increasingly difficult to remember clearly. Just like us. There's no point in me trying to summarise the plot of Wizard in the Wood any further than I already have done. It's another apprentice story. Want to be my apprentice?